Please, the baby.
Clear the hallway. She's losing too much blood. We need an OR stat.
The call came at 11:47. I was in my study, nursing a glass of whiskey, still fuming from the argument, still convinced I'd been right, still wrapped in the kind of righteous anger that makes men do unforgivable things. When my phone rang, I almost didn't answer, but something in the lateness of the hour, in the unfamiliar number on the screen, made me pick up. Is this Alessandro Moretti? Who's asking? This is Memorial Hospital. Your wife was brought in by ambulance about 20 minutes ago. She's in critical condition. We need you here immediately. The glass slipped from my hand, shattered on the hardwood floor. Whiskey spread like blood across the expensive wood. But I didn't notice. Couldn't process anything beyond the words critical condition and the sudden, crushing realization of what I'd done. What happened to her? Sir, please just come to the hospital. The doctors will explain everything. But you need to hurry. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my mind refusing to form coherent thoughts. Critical condition. Sophia, my pregnant wife. The woman I'd left standing outside our gates 3 hours ago. The woman I'd abandoned in the dark because my pride had been wounded and my anger had demanded she be punished. I was moving before conscious thought caught up. Keys, jacket, out the door. The drive to Memorial took 14 minutes. Every second felt like drowning. My mind kept circling back to the last image I had of her, standing outside the gates in the darkness, 7 months pregnant, wearing only a thin sweater because I hadn't given her time to grab a coat, looking at me through the car window with an expression I'd refused to interpret. Fear, disbelief, the kind of hurt that goes beyond words. I'd driven away, left her there, told myself she'd learn a lesson, that she needed to understand there were consequences for questioning me, for challenging my authority in front of my men, for making me look weak. I'd been so certain I was right, so wrapped up in my wounded pride and my need to maintain dominance, so convinced that my anger justified abandonment. The hospital emergency entrance blazed with light. I left my car in a no-parking zone and ran inside. The receptionist saw my face and didn't waste time with questions. 5th floor. ICU. The doctors are waiting for you. The elevator took forever. Each floor felt like years. By the time the doors opened on 5, I was barely breathing. A doctor stood in the hallway. Young. Female. Her expression carefully neutral in a way that made my chest tighten. Mr. Moretti. I'm Dr. Chin. Please, come with me. Where's my wife? What happened? Let's talk in private first. No. Tell me now. Where is Sophia? Dr. Chen's expression shifted. Sympathy mixed with something harder. Judgment, maybe. Your wife collapsed approximately 5 miles from your residence. A driver found her unconscious on the side of the road and called 911. By the time paramedics arrived, she was in severe distress. Mr. Moretti. She paused. Your wife was experiencing a placental abruption. Do you know what that is? I shook my head. Words felt impossible. It's when the placenta separates from the uterine wall prematurely. It's a medical emergency. Can be triggered by trauma, by stress, by physical exertion when the body is already compromised. Her voice remained professional, but I heard the accusation beneath it. Your wife walked 5 miles in her condition. A night. Alone. While 7 months pregnant. The physical stress, combined with whatever caused her to be in that situation, triggered the abruption. 5 miles. Sophia had walked 5 miles. I'd left her outside our gates, which were at the end of a long private road that connected to the main highway. She would have had to walk the private road first. Then the highway. 5 miles total to reach anything resembling civilization. 5 miles while carrying our child. 5 miles that had killed her. No, not killed. Critical condition. She was alive. Had to be alive. Where is she now? In surgery. We're trying to stop the bleeding. The baby. Dr. Chen's voice softened. We had to perform an emergency C-section. The baby is in the NICU. 28 weeks. Very premature. The next 48 hours will be critical for both of them. 28 weeks. Our son. Born months too early because I'd left his mother outside in the dark. Because my pride had been more important than her safety. Because I'd been so consumed with teaching her a lesson that I'd endangered both their lives. Can I see her? Not while she's in surgery. Could be hours. Mr. Moretti. Dr. Chen's expression hardened slightly. I need to know. What happened tonight? Why was your wife walking alone at night while heavily pregnant? I could have lied. Could have made up a story about a car breaking down. About a misunderstanding. Could have protected myself and my reputation. But the truth was crushing me. Demanding to be spoken. Demanding acknowledgement. I left her there. We had an argument. I was angry. I told her to get out of the car. And then I drove away. The silence that followed was damning. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but I saw the disgust flicker across her face. You left your pregnant wife on the side of the road. At night. At our gates. Not the side of the road. Our property. Your property that's 5 miles from the nearest help. While she was 7 months pregnant. Dr. Chen's voice was cold now. Clinical. Mr. Moretti, your wife almost died tonight. Your son is fighting for his life in an incubator. And you're telling me it's because you were angry. The words hit like bullets. Each one finding a target. Each one true. I done this. Not some enemy. Not some random accident. Me. My anger. My pride. My absolute certainty that I had the right to punish Sophia for daring to question me. I didn't know she'd walk. I thought she'd call someone. Come back inside. She tried to call someone. Dr. Chun pulled out a plastic bag from her pocket. Sophia's phone inside. Shattered screen. This was found near her. Broken. Probably dropped when she collapsed. The last call attempted was to you. 17 times. All unanswered. If you've ever realized too late that your anger hurt someone who couldn't fight back, you know what came next. I'd like to hear if you've carried that weight. Not to compare. Just to know the shape of this specific kind of guilt. 17 calls. Sophia had tried to reach me 17 times while walking in the dark. While in pain. While our baby was dying inside her. And I'd ignored every single one because I'd turned my phone on silent after leaving her. Because I hadn't wanted to hear her beg. Hadn't wanted my resolve weakened by her voice. Hadn't wanted to face what I'd done. I need to see my son. Dr. Chun nodded. Led me through sterile hallways to the NICU. Through windows I could see rows of incubators. Tiny babies hooked up to machines. Miracles and tragedies existing side by side. Dr. Chun stopped at one isolette near the back. He's there. You can't hold him yet. But you can see him. I approached slowly. Looked through the clear plastic at the smallest human being I'd ever seen. Smaller than a bag of flour. Skin translucent. Tubes and wires everywhere. A ventilator breathing for him. Monitors tracking every fragile heartbeat. My son. Born months too early. Fighting for every breath. Existing in this liminal space between life and death because his father had been too proud to control his temper. He weighs 2 pounds, 3 ounces. A nurse said softly. She stood nearby monitoring the machines. He's stable for now. But the next few days are critical. Babies born this early face significant challenges. Lung development. Brain development. Infections. We're doing everything we can. 2 pounds. Our son weighed less than a bag of sugar. Could fit in my hand. Existed in this fragile state because I'd valued my ego over his mother's safety. The guilt was crushing. Physical. I felt it in my chest like a weight that might stop my heart. What are his chances? The nurse's expression was kind but honest. It's hard to say. Every baby is different. But he's a fighter. He's already survived more than many babies his age do. We're cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic. Medical speak for we don't know. For he might live or he might die. For your son's future hangs in the balance because you couldn't control your temper for one night. I don't know how long I stood there. Time lost meaning. I watched my son's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. Watched the monitors track his vital signs. Watched nurses check lines and adjust settings. watched life being sustained through intervention and machines and the dedication of people who were fighting to save what I'd endangered. Eventually, someone touched my arm. Dr. Chen, your wife is out of surgery. She's in recovery. You can see her, but she's not conscious yet. It'll be a while before she wakes up. I followed her back through the hospital. To another room. Another set of machines. Sophia lay in the center of it all, pale and still. Bandages covered her abdomen. IVs ran into both arms. A blood transfusion bag hung beside her bed. She looked impossibly small. Impossibly fragile. Nothing like the strong woman I'd married. Nothing like the wife who'd stood up to me tonight. Who'd questioned my judgment. Who'd paid for that courage with her life and our son's health. I sat in the chair beside her bed. Took her hand carefully. Her fingers were cold. Limp. No response to my touch. Around us, machines beeped their steady rhythm. Proof of life. Proof she'd survived. But proof of what I'd cost her too. The night we'd argued replayed in my mind with brutal clarity. Every word. Every moment. Every choice that had led here. It had started at dinner. One of my lieutenants had made a comment about a deal I was negotiating. Sophia had been there. 7 months pregnant. Glowing despite the discomfort. She'd listened quietly as we discussed business. Territory. The usual violence disguised as strategy. Then she'd spoken. Alessandro, is that really wise? You're trusting someone with a history of betrayal. The table had gone silent. Everyone staring. Waiting to see how I'd handle my wife questioning me in front of my men. The smart thing would have been to discuss it privately later. To acknowledge her concern. To show that I valued her opinion even if I ultimately disagreed. But I hadn't done the smart thing. I'd done the prideful thing. Sophia, this is business. You don't understand how these things work. I understand betrayal. And I understand that man has betrayed every partner he's ever had. Why would you be different? Because I'm stronger than his other partners. Because I have leverage. Or because you're too proud to admit you might be wrong. That had been it. The line crossed. The challenge issued. In front of everyone. My wife questioning my judgment. Implying I was letting pride cloud my decision-making. Making me look weak. Foolish. Like a man who couldn't control his own household. I'd stood. Voice cold. We're leaving. Sophia had looked confused. Hurt. Alessandro. Now. The drive home had been silent. My anger building. My pride wounded. My mind spinning with how she'd embarrassed me. How she'd undermined my authority. How she'd made me look weak in front of men who respected only strength. When we'd reached our gates, I'd stopped the car. Made a decision I could never undo. Get out. Sophia had stared at me. What? You think you know better than me? You think you can question me in front of my men? Then you can find your own way home. Get out. Alessandro, I'm 7 months pregnant. It's dark. Please, can we just talk about this inside? You should have thought about that before you opened your mouth. Get out. Please. Get out. She'd hesitated. Then opened the door. Stepped out into the night. Looked back at me with those eyes. Those beautiful eyes that had looked at me with love since the day we met. Now filled with hurt. With disbelief. With the beginning of fear. Alessandro, please. Don't do this. I'd driven forward. Activated the gates to close behind me. Left her standing there. 7 months pregnant. In the dark. Miles from help. I told myself she'd learn. That she'd call someone. That this was necessary. That she needed to understand there were consequences for disrespecting me. For questioning my authority. For making me look weak. I've been so wrong. So catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. And now my wife lay unconscious in a hospital bed. Now my son fought for his life in an incubator. Now I sat in the sterile room surrounded by machines and understood with crushing clarity that pride was the most expensive thing I'd ever owned. Sophia had walked. I learned the details later from the paramedics' report. From security camera footage. From the reconstruction of events that damned me with every fact. She'd walked the private road first. 3 miles through our property. In the dark. No street lights. just her phone's flashlight to guide her. Then the highway, 2 more miles, walking on the shoulder, cars passing, no one stopping, just a pregnant woman alone at night, invisible to everyone except the eventual Good Samaritan who'd found her collapsed on the gravel. She tried to call me 17 times. The call log showed the timeline. Started 5 minutes after I'd left her. Continued at regular intervals. Getting more frequent as time passed. As pain increased. As fear grew. The last call was 20 minutes before her collapse. After that, just the attempted 911 call. The dropped phone. The darkness. I thought about what those miles must have been like. The physical pain of walking while heavily pregnant. The fear of being alone in the dark. The growing realization that I wasn't coming back. That she was truly alone. That the man who'd promised to love and protect her had abandoned her in her most vulnerable moment. The betrayal. The hurt. The terror as her body began to fail. As cramping started. As she felt something go wrong with the baby. As she tried to reach help that wouldn't come. And through it all, she'd been alone. Because of me. Because of my wounded pride. Because I'd valued my reputation more than her safety. Because I'd been so consumed with teaching her a lesson that I'd endangered both their lives. Dr. Chun had been right to look at me with disgust. I disgusted myself. What kind of man left his pregnant wife outside? What kind of husband prioritized ego over his family's safety? What kind of father endangered his unborn child because his authority had been questioned? The answer was clear. The kind of man I'd been. The kind of man who'd let power corrupt every decent instinct. Who'd confused fear with respect. Who'd believed that being strong meant being cruel. Sophia woke up 36 hours later. Slow. Confused. Her eyes opened and searched the room until they found me. I'd been sitting in the same chair. Hadn't left except to check on our son. Hadn't slept. Hadn't eaten. Just sat there holding her hand and trying to find words that could possibly express what I felt. What I'd done. What I'd cost us. Alessandro. Her voice was weak. Rough from the breathing tube they'd removed hours earlier. I'm here. Don't try to talk. You're in the hospital. You're safe now. The baby. He's alive. In the NICU. He's fighting. The doctors say he's stable. Tears filled her eyes. I tried to make it home. I tried to walk. But it hurt. And I couldn't breathe. And I tried to call you. I know. I'm so sorry. God, Sophia. I'm so sorry. My voice broke. I should never have left you there. I was angry and proud and stupid. And you almost died. Our son almost died. Because of me. Because I was too arrogant to see past my own wounded ego. She looked at me. Really looked. And I saw something break behind her eyes. Not her body this time. Something deeper. Something that might never heal. You left me there. While I was pregnant. In the dark. And you drove away. I know. I was so scared. I kept thinking you'd come back. That you'd realize what you'd done and turn around. But you didn't. You just left me there. The words were knives. Each one carving away at whatever was left of my pride. My justifications. My ability to see myself as anything other than the monster I'd been. I know. There's nothing I can say that makes it okay. Nothing I can do that undoes it. You're right to hate me. Right to never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't hate you. Sophia's voice was flat. Empty. I pity you. Because you're so consumed with being respected that you can't see what's actually important. That you'll sacrifice anything, even your own family, to maintain your pride. And that's just sad, Alessandro. It's not strong. It's not powerful. It's just sad. Her words hit harder than any accusation. Pity was worse than hate. Pity meant she saw me clearly. Saw the weakness beneath all my displays of strength. Saw the pathetic need for validation that drove every cruel choice. Saw the empty man pretending to be powerful by controlling and punishing the people who loved him. I want to see our son. You can't move yet, but I can show you pictures. The nurses have been taking them. I pulled out my phone. Showed her the images I'd been staring at for hours. Our tiny son in his isolette. Hooked up to machines. Fighting for his life. Sophia looked at each picture with an expression I couldn't read. Pain, love, fear, all of it mixed together. When I finished, she handed the phone back. What did you name him? I didn't. I waited for you. Marco, after my father. The only man who ever actually protected me. The words were another knife. Another reminder of my failure. Her father had died when she was young, but she'd always spoken of him with reverence. As the model of what a man should be. Strong but gentle. Powerful but kind. Everything I wasn't. Everything I'd failed to be when it mattered most. Marco, it's perfect. Sophia closed her eyes. I'm tired. I need to sleep. Of course. I'll be right here. I don't want you here. I want my mother. Can you call her? Tell her what happened? Ask her to come. The dismissal was worse than anger. Worse than accusation. It was the beginning of the end. The recognition that what we'd had was broken beyond repair. That I'd destroyed it with my pride. With my anger. With my absolute certainty that I had the right to abandon her because my ego demanded satisfaction. Yes, I'll call her right now. I stepped into the hallway, made the call, explained what had happened, listened to Sophia's mother rage at me, accepted every word, every accusation, every expression of disgust. I deserved all of it, deserved worse. When she finally ran out of breath, I gave her the hospital information. Hung up, stood in the empty hallway and felt the full weight of what I'd lost. My wife, maybe, probably. I'd see in the weeks ahead whether forgiveness was possible. Whether Sophia could ever trust me again. Whether the woman who'd looked at me with pity could ever look at me with love. The odds weren't good. The damage was too deep. The betrayal too profound. I'd abandoned her at her most vulnerable. Had shown her that my pride mattered more than her safety. That lesson couldn't be unlearned. Couldn't be forgotten. Couldn't be overcome with apologies or promises or any amount of regret. My son's health. Maybe. Probably. The doctors gave cautious prognosis. Talked about developmental delays. About potential disabilities. About the risks premature babies faced. About how the next months would be critical. How we'd have to watch and wait and hope. How there were no guarantees. No certainties. Just the reality that being born at 28 weeks meant a harder fight. A longer road. Challenges that might last a lifetime. All because I'd triggered his premature birth. Because my actions had forced him into the world before he was ready. Because my pride had endangered his development. My marriage. Definitely. Whether Sophia left me or stayed, what we'd had was gone. Trust shattered. Safety destroyed. Love complicated by trauma. Even if she stayed, and I didn't expect her to, things would never be the same. She'd always remember being abandoned. Always carry the knowledge that her husband valued his ego more than her life. Always wonder if I'd do it again. If the next argument would end with her alone in the dark. If the man who'd sworn to protect her could be trusted at all. My self-respect. Completely. I looked in mirrors now and saw a monster. A man who'd let power corrupt every decent instinct. Who'd mistaken fear for respect. Who'd believed that being strong meant being cruel. Who'd endangered his own family to prove a point that didn't matter. There was no coming back from that. No redemption. No way to erase what I'd done. Just the rest of my life knowing I'd been that man. Had made those choices. Had valued pride over everything that actually mattered. If this story makes your chest tight, if you understand what it means to realize too late that pride costs more than it's worth, you know why some mistakes can't be fixed. They can only be carried. Sophia's mother arrived the next morning. Rushed past me without a word. Went straight to her daughter. I heard them talking through the door. Heard Sophia cry. Really cry. The kind of sobbing that comes from somewhere deep. From trauma. From fear. From the recognition of how close she'd come to dying. From the betrayal of someone who was supposed to love her. Her mother emerged an hour later. Walked up to me where I sat in the hallway. Looked at me with pure contempt. Stay away from my daughter. Mrs. Rossi. No. You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify. You left my pregnant daughter outside in the dark because your ego was bruised. You drove away while she was vulnerable and scared. You ignored her calls while she walked miles in pain. And now she's here. My grandson is here. Both fighting because of you. So no, you don't get to talk. You don't get to ask for forgiveness. You stay away. She's my wife. He's my son. You forfeited those roles when you abandoned them. A husband protects his wife. A father protects his child. You did neither. You endangered them both. So yes, Alessandro, technically they're yours. But you don't deserve them. And if Sophia chooses to leave you, I'll make sure you never see either of them again. She walked away. Left me sitting in that hallway. Left me with the truth I'd been avoiding. I didn't deserve them. Didn't deserve Sophia's love. Didn't deserve Marco's trust. Didn't deserve the family I'd built and then destroyed with one night of uncontrolled anger. Didn't deserve anything except the guilt and regret that consumed every moment. Marco stayed in the NICU for 63 days. 2 months of watching him fight for every breath, every feeding, every tiny milestone that healthy babies reached without thinking. I visited him every day, sat by his isolette, talked to him even though he couldn't respond, told him I was sorry, that I'd failed him before he was even born, that I'd do better, be better, spend the rest of my life trying to earn his trust and love. The nurses were kind, professional. They never mentioned what had caused his premature birth. Never looked at me with judgment. Just showed me how to change his tiny diaper, how to take his temperature, how to feed him through the gavage tube, how to be a father to a baby who fit in my palms, who existed in this fragile state because I'd valued my pride over his mother's safety. Sophia visited when she could, after she was discharged, after she'd recovered enough to walk. She sat in a wheelchair beside Marco's isolette and stared at him with an expression I couldn't read. Love, fear, grief for what should have been, for the full-term pregnancy she'd deserved, for the healthy birth that had been stolen, for the first months of motherhood spent in a hospital instead of at home. We didn't talk much during those visits. What was there to say? Sorry felt inadequate. Explanations were worthless. Promises were meaningless. I'd already broken the most important promise I'd ever made. To love and cherish and protect. To put her first. To value our family over my ego. That promise was shattered. Nothing I said now could repair it. When Marco was finally discharged, Sophia moved in with her mother. Took our son to a house that wasn't mine. To safety I couldn't provide. To a family that had never abandoned her. She filed for separation 2 weeks later. Not divorce. Not yet. But separation. Space to figure out if healing was possible. If she could ever trust me again. If the damage was permanent or just profound. I didn't fight it. Didn't lawyer up. Didn't use my resources to force her to stay. Just signed the papers. Agreed to the terms. Gave her the space she needed. Because what else could I do? She was right to leave. Right to protect herself and Marco. Right to recognize that staying with me meant living with someone who'd proven he couldn't be trusted when it mattered most. The house felt empty without them. All my displays of wealth and power felt meaningless. What good was an empire if I was alone in it? What value did respect have if it had cost me my family? What was strength worth if I'd used it to wound the people I loved? The questions haunted me, had no good answers, just the echo of my own choices, the consequences I'd created, the life I'd destroyed with one night of unchecked pride. I tried to be a better father, showed up for every scheduled visit, held Marco carefully, fed him bottles, changed diapers, read him books he couldn't understand, played with toys he couldn't hold, did all the things fathers do. But underneath it all was the knowledge that I'd endangered him before he was born, that his early birth, his struggles, his challenges, all of it traced back to me, to my anger, to my decision to abandon his mother. Some things couldn't be fixed with present action. Some damage was permanent. Marco thrived despite everything, hit his milestones, grew stronger, proved that premature babies could overcome early challenges. The doctors were pleased. Cautiously optimistic turned into genuinely hopeful. He'd likely be fine. Might have some learning difficulties. Might need extra support. But fine. Alive. Healthy. A miracle considering how early he'd been born. Considering the circumstances of his birth. Considering that his father's pride had almost killed him. Sophia remained distant. Polite during visits. Cooperative about co-parenting. But the warmth was gone. The love was buried under layers of self-protection and trauma. She looked at me now the way you'd look at a stranger. Someone you once knew. Someone who'd disappointed you. Someone who couldn't be trusted with your heart. And she was right. I'd proven I couldn't be trusted. Couldn't control my temper. Couldn't put her safety above my ego. Couldn't be the husband she deserved. 6 months after Marco's birth, Sophia's lawyer called. She wanted to file for divorce. Permanent separation. She'd given me time. Given herself time. Tried to see if healing was possible. It wasn't. The damage was too deep. The betrayal too fundamental. She couldn't be married to someone who'd left her outside while pregnant. Who'd driven away while she begged. Who'd ignored her calls while she walked in pain. Couldn't trust someone who'd proven that pride mattered more than her life. And she shouldn't have to. Shouldn't have to live with that fear. Shouldn't have to wonder if the next argument would end with abandonment. Shouldn't have to protect herself from her own husband. I signed the papers. Agreed to her terms. Gave her the house. The money. Everything she wanted. Because what else could I do? Fight her? Force her to stay in a marriage she didn't want? Use my power to make her life difficult? That was the old me. The man who'd let pride rule every decision. The man who'd valued control over love. That man had destroyed my family. I wouldn't let him destroy anything else. The divorce was finalized a year after Marco's birth. Final. Permanent. Official acknowledgement that I'd lost my family. That my pride had cost me everything. That the empire I'd built. The power I'd accumulated. The respect I'd demanded. All of it was worthless without Sophia and Marco. All of it was empty. Meaningless. A monument to choices that had left me alone. I still saw Marco. Every week. Sophia was generous about visitation. Never used our son as a weapon. Never tried to poison him against me. Just let me be his father in the limited way our situation allowed. I was grateful for that. Grateful she was better than I'd been. Kinder. More focused on Marco's well-being than on punishing me. Though I deserved punishment. Deserved to have my son kept from me. Deserved to lose access to the family I'd endangered. She gave me grace I didn't earn. Showed me what actual strength looked like. Not the false power of control and dominance, but the real strength of mercy and compassion. Marco called me Papa. Smiled when he saw me. Reached for me with chubby hands. Loved me the way children love their parents. Unconditionally. Without judgment. Without understanding what I'd done. What I'd cost him. What his early birth had meant. He was too young to know. To remember. To carry the trauma his mother carried. And I was grateful for that. Grateful he'd been spared the memory. Even as I knew that someday I'd have to tell him. Have to explain why his parents weren't together. Why he lived with his mother and only visited his father. Why there was this distance. This separation. This consequence of choices made before he could remember. If you've stayed through this story, if you feel the weight of pride that costs everything, maybe you understand why some mistakes don't get fixed. They just become the rest of your life. The thing you carry. The price you pay. The consequence you live with. I thought about that night constantly. Replayed it. Rewrote it. In the version I created, I controlled my temper. I listened to Sophia's concern. I discussed it with her privately. I valued her opinion. I didn't let my pride be wounded by her question. I didn't demand she get out of the car. I didn't drive away. I didn't leave her in the dark. In that version, Marco was born full term. Healthy. Without complications. Sophia and I were still together. Still building a family. Still happy. That version played in my mind like a parallel life. A reminder of what could have been. What should have been. What would have been if I'd been a better man. But I hadn't been a better man. I'd been exactly who I was. Someone who'd let power corrupt every decent instinct. Who'd valued respect over love. who'd believed that being feared meant being strong, who'd abandoned his pregnant wife because his ego had been bruised. That was the truth, the reality, the choice that had cost me everything. And no amount of regret, no amount of therapy, no amount of changed behavior could undo it, could rewind time, could give me back what I'd lost. The business changed too. I stepped back, delegated more, set boundaries between work and life, made it clear that family came first, even if I'd lost mine, even if I'd proven I didn't understand that priority when it mattered. I learned, changed, became someone different, not for redemption. That wasn't possible, but because I couldn't be that man anymore, couldn't let pride rule, couldn't risk hurting anyone else the way I'd hurt Sophia and Marco, couldn't carry the weight of more failures, more regrets, more consequences. People noticed. Some saw it as weakness, others as evolution. I didn't care what they thought, didn't need their respect anymore, didn't need to prove anything, just needed to be someone Marco could be proud of, someone Sophia could co-parent with, someone who'd learned from catastrophic failure, who'd changed because there was no other option, who'd become better because being who I was had cost everything. Marco turned 3. We celebrated with a party at Sophia's house. I brought presents, played with the other children, smiled and pretended everything was fine. Sophia was polite, kind even. She'd moved on, found peace, built a life that didn't include me as anything more than Marco's father. She looked happy, lighter, free of the weight she'd carried when married to me. I was glad for her, glad she'd escaped, glad she'd found safety and happiness, even as it hurt to see what I'd lost, what I'd destroyed, what could have been ours. At the end of the party, Marco hugged me. "Love you, Papa. Love you too, buddy. So much. Why don't you live with us?" The question I'd been dreading. The one I'd known was coming. The one I didn't have a good answer for. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that you endangered him before he was born? That you left his mother outside while she was pregnant? That your pride had almost killed them both? You didn't. You gave a simplified answer and hoped that was enough. Because sometimes grown-ups are better as friends than as husband and wife. But I'll always be your papa. Always love you. Always be here when you need me. Marco seemed satisfied, hugged me tighter, ran off to play, left me standing there with Sophia, with the woman I'd loved, lost, failed in the most fundamental way. She looked at me with something I couldn't quite read. Not love, not anymore, but not hate either. Just sadness, recognition of what had been and what could never be again. Thank you for coming. He loves seeing you. Thank you for letting me be part of his life. I know I don't deserve it. You don't, but he does. Every child deserves a father, even if that father made terrible mistakes. You're trying to be better. That's more than some people do. I wish I'd been better when it mattered, when you needed me to be. Sophia's expression softened. So do I, but we don't get to change the past. We just get to decide what we do with the present. And right now, the best thing you can do is be a good father. Show Marco what strength actually looks like. Not power, not control, but kindness, protection, love that puts him first. Can you do that? I'll spend the rest of my life trying. Then that's enough. For now. For him. She paused. I've forgiven you, Alessandro. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. I've let it go. Made peace with what happened. Moved on. I hope you can too. Hope you can forgive yourself. Build a life that's more than regret. More than punishment. More than carrying what you can't change. I don't know if I can. Then that's your choice. Your prison. Your consequence. But don't let it poison your relationship with Marco. Don't let your guilt make you a worse father. He needs you to be present. Not perfect. Just present. Can you do that? Yes, I can do that. Sophia nodded. Smiled slightly. Good. Then that's what matters. Not the past. Not what you did or didn't do. Just what you're doing now. Every day. Every visit. Every moment you choose to be the father he needs instead of the man you were. That's the only redemption that exists. The only healing that's possible. The only way forward. She went back inside. Left me standing in her yard. In the space between who I'd been and who I was trying to become. Between catastrophic failure and uncertain redemption. Between the pride that had cost me everything and the humility I'd learned too late. It wasn't forgiveness. Not really. But it was permission to keep trying. To be better. To let my relationship with Marco be defined by present choices instead of past failures. It was more than I deserved. More grace than I'd earned. And I'd spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. The years passed. Marco grew. Became a person with thoughts and opinions and questions I did my best to answer honestly. We built a relationship that existed in the limited space our situation allowed. I was never the father I could have been. Never got those everyday moments. Never lived with him. Never was there for bedtime or breakfast or the thousand small ways fathers and sons connect. But I was there for visits. For holidays. For the moments Sophia generously shared. And I tried. Every time. To be present. To listen. To show him that love was more than words. That being a father meant showing up. Consistently. Reliably. With humility and grace. With recognition that the role was privilege, not right. Gift, not entitlement. People asked if I'd remarried. Found someone new. Moved on. I hadn't. Couldn't. Not because I was holding on to Sophia. She'd moved on. Built a life. Eventually started dating. I was glad for her. Glad she'd found happiness. But for me, moving on felt wrong. Like betraying the lesson I'd learned. Like forgetting the cost of my pride. Like pretending the past could be overcome instead of carried. So I stayed single. Focused on being a better father. On building something meaningful beyond empire and power. On learning what actually mattered. Marco asked about that night when he turned 10. Old enough to understand. Old enough to have heard pieces from others. Old enough to deserve truth. We sat in a park. Just us. And I told him. Everything. The argument. The abandonment. The consequences. The premature birth. The fact that my pride had endangered both him and his mother. That his early struggles traced back to my failure. That I'd been that man. Made those choices. Cost him those months of development. I didn't spare myself. Didn't soften the truth. Just laid it bare and waited for his response. Marco listened. Quiet. Processing. When I finished, he looked at me with eyes that reminded me of Sophia's. Thoughtful. Assessing. That was really bad, Papa. Yes, it was. Did you mean to hurt Mom and me? No. But that doesn't matter. I did hurt you. Hurt you both. Endangered you both. Because I couldn't control my temper. Couldn't let go of my pride. Couldn't see past my own anger. But you're different now. Right? I try to be. Every day. Every moment. But trying doesn't erase what I did. Doesn't undo the damage. Doesn't make it okay. Marco was quiet for a long time. Then, I forgive you. The words hit like physical force. Marco, I forgive you. Not because it's okay. Mom taught me it's not okay. But because holding on to anger hurts me. And because you're trying. And because everyone deserves a chance to be better. Even people who make terrible mistakes. Even dads who almost killed their kids. You get a chance. Just one. Don't waste it. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process the grace I didn't deserve. Coming from a child. From my son. Who'd been hurt before he could remember. Who carried consequences of choices he didn't make. Who was offering me what I couldn't offer myself. Forgiveness. Permission to keep trying. Recognition that redemption existed not in erasing the past but in building a different present. I won't waste it. I promise. Good. Because I love you, Papa. And I want you to be happy. But you can't be happy if you're always punishing yourself. Can't be a good dad if you're stuck in the past. So forgive yourself. Learn. Be better. That's what Mom did. That's what I'm doing. That's what you have to do too. He was right. Sophia had moved on. Marco had forgiven me. The only person still trapped in that night. Still replaying it. Still drowning in guilt and regret. Was me. And staying there didn't help anyone, didn't undo the damage, didn't change the past, just poisoned the present, made me a worse father, a less present person, a monument to failure instead of someone trying to be better. So I forgave myself, not because I deserved it, not because what I'd done was okay, not because the consequences were erased, but because staying in that prison of guilt helped no one. Hurt Marco by making me less present, hurt Sophia by keeping our past alive, hurt me by preventing growth, healing, change, the kind of transformation that could only happen when you let go of who you'd been and embraced who you were trying to become. It wasn't easy, wasn't instant, was a process that took years. Therapy, self-reflection, humility, recognition that redemption wasn't about forgetting or erasing, but about acknowledging, learning, changing, being someone different, not perfect, never perfect, but better, more aware, more controlled, more focused on what actually mattered, on the people I loved, on being present instead of powerful, on showing up instead of proving something. Marco graduated high school. I was there, proud, present, watching him walk across that stage, become a man despite his difficult beginning, despite his father's failure, despite everything that had tried to hold him back. He looked at me in the crowd, smiled, nodded, acknowledgement, connection, the relationship we'd built, the redemption I'd been granted, the grace I'd been given, the chance to be better, to show love that put him first, to be the father he deserved instead of the man who'd endangered him. If you're still here, if the story resonated in ways that hurt, maybe you understand what it means to learn too late and spend the rest of your life trying to earn back what you lost. Pride costs more than it's worth. Control is an illusion. Power means nothing without love. These are lessons I learned by destroying my family. Lessons I hope you learn differently. Before anger becomes abandonment. Before pride becomes catastrophe. Before you're left holding consequences that can't be undone, only carried for the rest of your life.